Guys, I just have to say it. Leonard Williams isn't a good football player. What's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today's topic is going to be Leonard Williams and why he has really been a disappointment. But before we get started, I just wanted to mention that you could follow me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So some might say that's a little bit of a hot take or a little bit unfair to say that he's bad or just isn't a good football player, but at this point in his career, he's just not producing at the level that the Jets need him to. Yesterday against the Philadelphia Eagles, he was just flat out invisible. He had one tackle in the entire game, which brings his season tackle total up to 4. 4 tackles in 4 games from someone who is supposed to be your best or one of your best players on the defensive side on the ball is just unacceptable. Through 4 games, he has a 52.2 Pro Football Focus rating, which is just so average and mediocre. And when you think about where the Jets took him and what the situation was, it's just so beyond frustrating to watch Leonard Williams play week in and week out. And the disappointing part is, in 2015, there was mini flashes. He looked solid in 2016. In year 2, he took a step forward, but 17, 18, and now 19, 3 years in a row, he has taken a step back in his development, and he's just not the player you hoped he would be when the Jets drafted him. So in 2015, the Jets had the 6th overall pick. Sound familiar? It seems like the Jets always have the 6th overall pick, which is not quite high enough to land an ultimate impact player that's going to affect the win-loss record on a regular basis. So ultimately, in 2015, the Jets had Leonard Williams fall, and I'm using that in air quotes, to them at 6. A lot of people said that he was the best overall player in that draft, and Mike Maccagnan obviously bought into that and decided to pick him with the 6th overall pick. Since then, he has not been the best player in that draft, and not even by a long shot. And the part that makes it really confusing is because at that point, the Jets already had Sheldon Richardson, Muhammad Wilkerson, Damon Harrison, all at that position. So they double down and take an interior defensive lineman with Leonard Williams. That pick didn't make a lot of sense to me at the time, and it still doesn't to this day. Now, fast forward just a few years later, 4 to be exact, and the New York Jets found themselves in a very similar situation. You had Leonard Williams, Henry Anderson, and Steve McClendon. 3 pretty good, not as good as the last 3 that I mentioned the first go around, but 3 pretty solid defensive linemen, and they go ahead and draft Quinnen Williams. And supposedly Quinnen Williams was the best player in the draft. You have to take him when he fell there. And I'm not to say that Quinnen Williams is exactly going to be like Leonard Williams. I think he's going to be better. I mean, he had more tackles in the Eagles game alone than Leonard Williams has on the entire year so far, which is mind-boggling in itself, but it's the truth. But when you continue with this philosophy of roster building and continue to draft interior defensive linemen and not address key positions like the offensive line, cornerback, edge rush, you wonder why the Jets have no depth and are lacking at such important positions. I mean, let's look at this New York Jets team. The offensive line is probably the worst thing with this team. Has to be one of the worst things with this team. Cornerback situations, not much better. And edge rush, we know how bad that's been. And Mike Maccagnan didn't address any of those things. And no, this doesn't necessarily fall on Leonard Williams' shoulders, but it just goes to show you the logic of that pick in 2015. Yes, was he supposed to be better than what he turned out to be? Of course. But why couldn't you have taken someone like Vic Beasley who would have addressed another need? Granted, hindsight's 2020, but you have to look at what your team needs when you're drafting too. I hate the take the best player available philosophy. Hate it. Because that's how you end up with a million interior defensive linemen and another 5-win season. If Leonard Williams didn't play the rest of the season, I'm not 100% sure the Jets' win-loss total changes all that much. And that's pretty damning on someone who's a top 10 pick and is supposedly supposed to be in the prime of their career. I mean, at this point, Basham is the best defensive lineman on this New York Jets team, who they found off the scrap heap last year, got him from the Colts for nothing, and now he is your best defensive lineman. and he's coming off the edge. Yeah, he's more of a rotational guy, but still there is something there. He is showing you more than Leonard Williams, who is making $14.2 million and was a top 10 pick. I don't understand it. How could he be this bad? And for those who are saying, oh, well, he was double teamed a ton, which is not true. Henry Anderson was doubled more than Leonard Williams was last year. Well, Quentin Williams was back. He was supposed to unleash Leonard Williams. Oh, he unleashed him all right. Unleashed him to one full tackle. Thank you, Leonard Williams. At this point, it would be an unmitigated disaster if the New York Jets gave him a second contract. At this point, I think you just have to move on and let some other fool pay him $60, $70, $80 million in a long-term deal, which is nuts. You can't do that if you're in the New York Jets. They have way too many other needs to address that kind of money into a player who doesn't get to the quarterback in terms of sack numbers. I mean, you could feed the pressure stat at me for all you want, but at the end of the day, he's not getting to the quarterback. He has 0 sacks and has 9 in the last 2 years. Leonard Williams has been one of the biggest disappointments in my mind this year and over the last few years, especially when this team is down. His effort goes down the tubes, which I don't want that. He's someone who is supposed to be playing 80, 90, a ton of snaps, percentage of snaps, 80, 90%. He's a rotational guy. At this point, he's a rotational player. From the Jets, maybe you try and sell off. Can you get a sucker to give you a third-round pick? Maybe some fool gives you a second who's desperate. I'd think about it. I would move Leonard Williams for a third-round pick. If a general manager called me up on the phone right now and said, I will take Leonard Williams off your hand for a third-round pick, I'm taking it. The Jets need more assets long-term. Leonard Williams isn't that. I'm really disappointed in his effort this year and for the last few years. Let me know what you think on Leonard Williams in the comments below, or get at me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'll talk to you guys next time.